Welcome to Transparency with Diana B., a podcast from wealthmanagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. In this podcast, we explore some of the deepest struggles and hardships that many advisors face and bring these issues out into the open so that others may find healing. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to overcome the stresses and anxieties as Diana draws from years of expertise and guest experts to manage the personal challenges of advisors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Transparency with Diana B., a podcast by wealthmanagement.com. My name is Diana Britton, and I'm the managing editor of wealthmanagement.com. For those of you who are new to the podcast, each episode focuses on a personal development issue facing financial advisors. Guests join me to talk about their own experiences dealing with the struggle and how they overcame that. My guest today is Julie Johnson, who was a former senior vice president at UBS Financial Wealth Management, and she's currently president and CEO of executive coaching and public speaking firm XY Communication. She specializes in speaking and coaching on bridging the gap in communication and strengthening professional relationships and trust between genders and generations. In today's environment, she's sharing her ideas of how, even in this chaotic time, it is the perfect opportunity to be strengthening relationships with your team and clients, and an amazing time to prospect for new business. And so as a former Wirehouse advisor herself, she knows a thing or two about the gender gap in this industry and the stresses associated with being a woman in financial services. So Julie, I know you started out in the business at Smith Barney around 1996, smiling and dialing, as they say. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of your career. I know you were Rookie of the Year, right? And, just doing a lot of good work. Things were going pretty well. Tell me about that time.
Great. Thank you so much. And yes, I was smiling and dialing, of course, we used to have desktop phones. Sorry. That is how we built the business, is you would we didn't have social media. We certainly, of course, had computers, but we didn't have social media in any way, shape, or form. And so it was literally picking up the phone. We would make as many as 100 phone calls a day from the phone book. You would dig through leads. Smith Barney would provide lead lists and such, but you would do it based on wealthy zip codes, and you would try to get creative about it, but there wasn't the online demographic searching that there is today. So it was a lot of hit and miss. You really had to learn what questions to ask, filtering questions, fact-finding questions at the very beginning of the call. And you had to have a pretty thick skin because there was a lot of hangups.
Yeah. But you grew, you were pretty successful at that, right? And you grew pretty fast.
I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I was raised by a wonderful mom and a pretty ostentatious and domineering father, very social. Mm-hmm. So we learned how to, if you will, talk the talk from a very young age, and we learned how to get people to talk. As many of us in sales realize and know, when you start asking someone about themselves and things that are close to their heart, you can usually get them to start talking to you. And it worked a good amount of the time. If you are successful in getting one prospect a day, that's incredible. There are certainly days where that was not the case, and by prospect, it's someone who has investable assets that is willing to meet with you. So yes.
Yeah. And you eventually you joined up with a male partner, right?
That's correct. So about a year, for the first year and a half in business, I was on my own. As you stated, I was very honored to be named Rookie of the Year with Smith Barney. And then I was recruited by another wealth advisor who was knocking the doors down, doing so extremely well that he needed help.
Mm.
And the best service that he provided was he was an amazing person in asset allocation and on the investment side,
Mm-hmm.
and hated cold calling. And so the two of us paired up, and it was very successful for quite some time.
Yeah. And so what was he like other than that? I mean, and how did he treat you as a partner? I know you told me he was pretty narcissistic, right?
Yeah. So we're all products of our environment, right? We're all products of either our families, our parents, how we were raised. And he was raised by a very domineering father and a very passive mother. And I don't believe got a lot of emotional support. Not that, back in the day, he is I hate to be stereotypical, but a prototypical baby boomer. You kind of figure stuff out on your own, and you just push through. He was a golf prodigy, so was used to being treated very well at a very young age and being in the limelight. And he didn't think that his stunk. So basically, in his mind, he was doing me a very big favor by allowing me to join his practice. And he reminded me of that often. Yet, on the other hand, he was also extremely charming. He was generous in his own way. But yeah, he could be very verbally abusive. And unfortunately, I was raised in a sense where I was kind of used to that. So I allowed it to happen. And I didn't have the self-confidence and the self-worth to tell him to back off and, to stop speaking to me that way. I just kind of went along with it. We were doing really well in business, making good money. I kind of assumed that this was probably par for the course.
What were some of the things that he would say to you like that?
He
bothered you?
Yeah, he would talk to me, like I was very sort of secondary, very not very smart. When I would bring up ideas, he would kind of give me a smirk and a chuckle and say, "Oh, I know you're doing the best you can," or "Nice try, but no." And, his consistent mantra, even well into, 9/11, 2001 timeframe, 2008, 2009, he would constantly say, "Julie, this is business. It's not personal." And needless to say, when you are dealing with people's life savings, and we also had a number of institutional clients, pensions, 401ks, family office money, I would tell him, you are wrong. This is absolutely personal. And so he would just roll his eyes and walk away. And he never heard me. He never honored my opinion. He never made me feel like he valued what I had to say. And we can get into later, many people listening to this may ask, well, why in the world did you stay with him then? But I don't want to jump ahead to that too soon. We can get into that.
Yeah. So what were some of the red flags in the relationship? I mean, obviously some of the things you just mentioned, but like any specific stories or things that you remember that were really just hurtful or.
He would belittle me in front of clients. He would belittle me in front of other team members and other staff. He never spoke to me with respect in front of other people. When we would be out with clients, he would basically treat me like I was the secretary. So often our clients thought I was the secretary. He would send me to get drinks. He would never include me in the conversation during client meetings, during, client dinners. He wouldn't include, if the woman came, the significant other came, he wouldn't include her either. So it was basically my job to be the person who took care of the wife, kept her entertained and happy while they went off and did quote unquote business. And he would talk about how I looked. He would talk about, very inappropriate statements in that nature. Say things like, it's a good thing you have a nice rack and stuff like that. I mean,
God.
it was pretty horrendous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, many folks in the industry might remember the term boom, boom room,
Mm-hmm.
which was described the class action lawsuits challenging sexual hazing and disparities against professional women on Wall Street in the 1990s. And the suit was named after a basement party room at Smith Barney's branch office in Garden City, New York. And
I know of it. Yes.
yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you kind of got caught up in that culture. And, I mean, we know that those, sexual harassment, sexual
there's innuendo,
disparities. Yeah, they still persist in this industry.
They do,
unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, did he? I know that you said one time you were on maternity leave, and the firm, you guys were transitioning to another firm, and he made the headquarters for the transition at your house.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me about that. I mean, that just sounds outrageous to me.
I absolutely love, and I am a champion of life-work balance or work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was working from 96 until I finally left in 2010, we were working all the time. And if I wasn't at work and working all the time, I got shit for it. And eventually I got I became codependent, and he was a total narcissist. I became codependent, and I own that. I recognize that now. But I was only as happy as my clients were. I was only as happy as he was. I was only as happy as I thought I was always taking care of everyone else, even to the sacrifice of, my marriage. And I had a daughter in 2004 and a son in 2007. And when I was on maternity leave, we were in the process of moving our practice from Smith Barney to UBS. And at that point in time, we had approximately $1.2 billion under management. Needless to say, several clients. There were 4 partners. I was the only female partner. And we had a team of 12. And everyone, without even asking me or my husband, now ex-husband, my partner basically said, "Oh, I have a great idea. Let's use Julie's house as, ground central for moving, and, all of the documents, all of the, phone calls that we need to make during the transition, et cetera. That's a perfect idea." And I looked at him and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a brand new baby with me. And for those parents, when you have a brand new baby, you never sleep. You're totally on edge. For a woman, your hormones are all over the place. But I didn't have I could have had a choice in the matter. I didn't fight hard enough to have a choice in the matter. I asked him, "All right, are you going to get me a nanny to be able to help with my child during this?" And he said, "Oh, you'll be fine. We'll figure it out. You'll be fine. Basically suck it up." Ugh. And it just was, I was on the phone constantly talking to clients. And I have to admit, so much of this occurred because I allowed it to. And there's a lot of reasons. He helped my family, not just my immediate family, but my extended family. He was a family friend, and helped my family in a number of different ways. And so I felt that there was no way that I could potentially sacrifice this partnership by letting people know what was going on, and by leaving the partnership, because I just felt like that was going to screw everyone else up also.
Yeah. And you were also slated to take over the practice, right?
That was really the main. So the familial relationship was reason number one. Reason number two was I was the heir apparent of the practice to take over as soon as the transition was done in 2008. So I figured, okay, he's going to be gone. I had a fabulous team of people that I had built. We were all had a great symbiotic culture. We had great clients. We were ready to go. And I felt this eventual weight lifting off my shoulders, and this, the constant nausea in my stomach starting to go away as we approached this transition. And then, of course, March of 2008 hit, and all bets were off. And
we all know what happened then.
Not only, so I had, 2 little kids at home, hormones all over the place, so much stress at work. And the clients, which were the most important to me, were heartbroken, scared to death. My partner was no help whatsoever. He was like, that's, his constant mantra was, "Julie, this is business." And I'm the one who is listening to clients calling, freaking out, crying, being very upset, very angry. And no one else was there to help me take their calls. And so it was a time like I can't even describe. It was, looking back on it makes me feel so incredibly sick to my stomach, even to this day. And the other thing too is I had nothing in my contract. I had no clause in my contract as far as me taking over the business that prepared, excuse me. Sorry about that. I had no clause in my contract that covered for such an event. So my income did not increase. My income didn't change. He stayed, which, was appropriate. He needed to stay. but basically that's kind of when everything started falling apart. My dad died in 2008.
I'm sorry.
That business partner ended up going to Betty Ford in 2008. He was a very highly functioning alcoholic, which I had suspected but didn't know.
Sure.
I mean, everything, just everything around me was falling apart. And that's when my health started severely falling apart.
Yeah. So what kind of toll did all this take on your health? What started happening?
Yeah, pretty severe. I would pass out. My heart stopped working. I was a runner and an athlete, but my heart rate was beating in the 50s and then the 40s and then the 30s. My blood pressure was really low. I was getting migraines, just dizzy all the time. I honestly at times was having a hard time articulating my words. And I went to Mayo, NIH, the best doctors I could see, and no one could figure out what was wrong other than that it was stress induced. And so of course, as we push through, we can do it. I can make it. This is all going to be fine. It's going to be, I'll get through it. And finally in 2010, I'll never forget sitting in my office. I get a call from my neurologist, and she said, "Julie, I've consulted with the cardiologist, and we both agree that you must leave and go out on disability." And I literally remember laughing at her. That wasn't in the plan. I had a plan. I had a life plan, and that was not part of it. And, but after, literally more times than I could count, passing out in the office, passing out at home, thank goodness, never in front of my kids. I never hurt myself or anybody else, thank God. But I finally had to go out on disability and talk about an identity crisis. I absolutely lost who I was. And unfortunately, it was a disease that nobody could put a name to. And being an A-type person, I rely on science, I rely on math, and no one could figure out what this was. And so not having an answer, not having control, not having any kind of knowledge of my prognosis or what was going to happen in both my work life, my personal life, my physical life, was something that I've never experienced before.
Yeah, sometimes that can be the most frustrating part of it all,
Absolutely.
Not knowing what it is.
It's very lonely and very scary. It took a huge toll on my marriage. I even had family members that didn't necessarily understand or support what was going on. What's very, very hard in a disease like this is you still look normal.
Right.
And so even though you look normal, your body internally is falling apart. And, so trying to get disability was a challenge. And so you really start to doubt yourself. I mean, I had wavering self-esteem prior to all of that. And then my business partner slowly but surely, cut layers off of that over the years. And then when I had business people and health, doctors and whatnot, basically saying, "Julie, we don't see what's wrong with you." I'm like, okay, well, explain why my heart doesn't beat anymore. Explain why my blood pressure doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So it was an extraordinarily, extraordinarily challenging time.
So you eventually decided to get out of the business,
Not
right?
by choice.
Mm.
Ironically, what's the definition of insanity? Trying to do the same thing time and time again, expecting a different result. In 2012, so I left UBS and the partnership in 2010. And then in 2012, had an opportunity to go back, work with a different team of people, wonderful team of people, went in to the boardroom, sat down to sign all the contracts and paperwork, and I literally had a panic attack. And that was, needless to say, my body's way of saying, you are not going to do this again.
Mm.
And then I really had a low because I'm like, okay, if I can't be a financial advisor, that was what I wanted to do my entire life. If I can't do that, what the heck do I do next?
Yeah.
And I left, and I had quite a period of depression. No one really knew how to help me. I didn't really know how to help me. Of course, went to therapy and everything else, but felt just very defeated, very lost. To be totally honest, I'm very thankful I have children because they were the ones that kept me going. And then about a year later, I had an amazing opportunity to meet author and renowned speaker Brene Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And she changed my life. I went and got certified in her programs, read and studied all of her work, and realized that that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the voice for people such as myself who didn't have anybody to talk to, who didn't have anybody to help them feel worthy, help them feel that they did have the power to say no. They did have the power to stand up for themselves. They didn't have to deal with the crap for years, and to have the strength to leave.
Yeah.
And even under the most, it was like a spider web, all of the things that he was involved in my life, that, I didn't feel like I could get out of that. And especially then also the opportunity of taking over this business that I had helped build for, a decade and a half, to have all of that just gone. Right. And, man, hindsight is 2020 and then some, but there's so many things. I get angry because there's so many things that if I had the opportunity to go back, knowing what I know now, I would do it so differently. Yeah. But obviously you have to go through the hell to learn what I learned. And I absolutely love what I do now. And I've grown it from not just empowering women to also, I have delved into really doing the best I can to understand the drivers and the communication styles of women and men, how they are different, and how we can bridge them to really build stronger, more mutual respectful relationships. And then over the years, I also found that there was a huge disconnect between older and younger generations in the workplace, how they communicate with one another, a very large disparity in their level of respect and understanding one another. And so that's how I've grown my business now. And I through amazing people that I've met, both in my previous financial career and in the last few years, amazing support, amazing opportunities. I got to speak at the Barron's National Conference just last month. And unfortunately, with the coronavirus, a lot of speaking opportunities and engagements have been put on hold, understandably. All right. But I tell you, it warms my heart and gives me goosebumps every single day to be able to help others maybe have paradigm shifts and see things that might bring them, fear in the midst of chaos, and do what I can to be a different set of eyes for them to see it potentially a different way that can help them get to the other side and communicate more appropriately, ask for what they want more appropriately, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like your experiences really shaped who you are today and what you're doing. What were some of the, I mean, I know you've come a long way and gone through a lot. What got you through all of those hard times? What are some of the philosophies now that keep you going and have made you get through the hard stuff?
Sure. So on my about page on my website, XY Communication, I write the story, and I titled it "The Body Always Wins."
Mm.
So I urge people to not power through, to listen to what's going on for them, and to get whatever help they need, no matter, and you have to constantly advocate for yourself. Even when you have amazing friends and family, you have to advocate for yourself, because as much as we hope that the medical professionals will have the answers, they don't always. And so a lot of times you have to do your own digging. And when you know something's wrong, don't just live with it. Do everything that you can to figure it out. Excuse me. Secondly, I write about, and I'm aging myself, but for people, that were around in the 70s and 80s, there's an Angeli commercial. It's a perfume. Angeli was a perfume. And I remember growing up watching this perfume commercial, wanting to be the woman who was the main character, where she would come home and there's this, sassy, great song in the background. And this beautiful woman comes home. She's in a great business suit. She has her hair all done. She throws her briefcase on the couch. She pulls her hairpin out of her hair, shakes out her perfectly coiffed hair, starts, without missing a beat, starts cooking dinner. And then her, Ken doll of a husband walks in the door with flowers, gives her a kiss. It's like she has everything, right? And I tell you, it's very, very true that having everything comes at a price. And so perfectionism has got to be let go. We have to give ourselves permission to just do the best we can. And we have to find the people, both at work and in our personal lives, that support whatever level that is. There's not a right or a wrong. It's just different. Mm-hmm. And so we have to find out who we are and what we need, and find our village, find the people that support us at work, find the people that support us at home. And then we're able to just know and have a confidence and feel empowered and heard and respected. And that is something that I didn't have for a very long time. And it's a must. I mean, when you feel so small and so disrespected for so many years, it literally has a very real physical effect.
Yeah.
And we have to give ourselves permission to say no and to get help.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think it's often hard to do that, but it's
Very.
Hearing you say that, I think will carry a lot of weight with folks listening. Well, we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank my guest, Julie Johnson. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your story and just being so open about these issues.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to reach out to Julie for coaching or speaking opportunities or just to talk, she's available. You can call her or text her at 303-726-8976, or you can email her at julie@xycommunication.com. And if you have a struggle and you wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at transparencywithdianab@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to Transparency with Diana B. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there is healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Transparency with Diana B podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of wealthmanagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you have regarding your particular situation.